The rain fell gently over the gardens of the DeLuca estate, as if the sky itself had decided to weep for the souls trapped within those golden walls. The iron gate opened slowly, creaking under the weight of tradition and secrets. Inside a black limousine, Isabela Moretti watched the mist-covered stone path. Her reflection in the glass was a mixture of fear and disbelief. At 23, she was heading toward a fate she had never chosen. The marriage had been arranged weeks ago, an agreement between families that had lost their shine but not their pride. The Morettis were bankrupt. The DeLucas, powerful, needed an image of purity and nobility to restore the prestige tarnished by scandals. The union was the perfect antidote. Isabela would be the bargaining chip. As the car moved forward, she remembered her father, Vittorio Moretti, sitting silently the night before, his gaze lost in a glass of wine. "You must understand, my daughter. Sometimes, love is a luxury life doesn't allow." That phrase echoed in her mind like a sentence. When she stepped out of the car, a cold wind lifted the veil she held between her fingers. The DeLuca mansion rose before her like an ancient palace, wrapped in shadows and memories. On the staircase, a figure awaited, Leonardo DeLuca, the man who would be her husband. He was in his early 30s, with a presence so firm it seemed to shape the air around him. His gaze was impenetrable, almost cruel, but there was something there, a flicker of pain, as if he carried within him a wound the world couldn't see. The wedding took place in silence, with few guests and many calculated glances. The ceremony was cold, almost ritualistic. When Leonardo took her hand, Isabela felt the touch, cold but firm, as if he wanted to prove something. Perhaps to himself, perhaps to the father watching from the front row, Don Carlo DeLuca, the patriarch whose shadow loomed over them all. That night, Isabela wandered the mansion's corridors. The luxury was suffocating. Italian tapestries, crystal chandeliers, portraits of ancestors whose eyes seemed to follow her. She felt small before the grandeur of the place and the silence that filled it. In that silence, the sound of her own footsteps felt like a confession. She found a piano in the main hall. She played one note, then another. The melody spread softly, melancholically, until a voice interrupted her. "I didn't expect anyone to dare play that piano again." Leonardo stood at the doorway, his face partially lit. I'm sorry. I didn't know. It belonged to my mother." He approached slowly, his tone cold, but his gaze vulnerable. "No one has played it since she died." Isabela said nothing, but she didn't flee. They remained silent for a moment, caught between the suspended notes and the weight of memories. Then he did something unexpected. He sat beside her. His large, marked hands touched the piano with improbable delicacy. For a moment, the rigid man revealed a contained tenderness, an old pain that still lived within him. That was the first crack in the wall surrounding them. In the days that followed, Isabela realized the house had more secrets than doors. There was a locked room on the second floor, the only one Leonardo never mentioned. The maid Lucia always looked away when asked. "Don't go there, Signorina," she whispered. Some memories should sleep forever, but curiosity was a form of survival, and Isabela was tired of merely surviving. One night, unable to sleep, she followed the distant sound of music. It was the same piano. The notes came from the hall, but when she arrived, the instrument was closed. On the floor, however, were rose petals and a fallen old photograph, a woman with black hair, a melancholic smile. Leonardo's mother. On the back of the photo, a dedication. "To my beloved Sophia, may music unite us, even when the world tries to tear us apart." Isabela shivered. That phrase felt like a premonition. The next morning, Leonardo found her in the garden. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, and for the first time, he seemed human, without the weight of the name he carried. "You shouldn't walk alone around here. There are places in this house that bring bad memories." "I'm not afraid of memories," she replied. "I'm afraid of forgetting who I am." He looked at her as if seeing something dangerous. "Be careful, Isabela. Truth is a burden too heavy for someone who just arrived." But it was too late. The seed of truth had been planted. In the days that followed, Isabela began to notice subtle details, letters hidden in books, scratched out portraits, whispers among the staff. Everything pointed to a past stained by something no one dared name. And somehow, she felt her arrival wasn't just an arrangement, but a carefully chosen piece to cover something much greater. One afternoon, during a storm, fate decided to show its face. A door, once locked, opened with the wind. Inside, the forgotten room, dusty curtains, a portrait of Sofia DeLuca on an easel, and an unfinished score on a broken piano. On the floor, an unsent letter. She read it with trembling hands. Leonardo, my son, if one day someone plays this piano again, it's because pain has turned into forgiveness. Don't let your father's hatred destroy the love we inherited. The truth I hide may free, or condemn us all. Before she could react, she heard footsteps behind her. Leonardo stood at the door, his eyes burning like restrained fire. Why did you come in here? He asked, his voice low, dangerous. Because I needed to understand who you are. He approached, and for a moment, the air felt too dense. And what did you discover? That you're a prisoner of something that wasn't your fault. The silence that followed was almost unbearable. Leonardo looked away, and behind the mask of pride, a solitary tear slid down. You have no idea what you're saying, ... double quotes, but she did. She felt the weight of a secret she didn't yet fully understand and knew, deep down, that her presence there was meant to awaken sleeping ghosts. That night, Isabela returned to the piano. She played the same melody his mother once did, now with tears in her eyes. From upstairs, Leonardo listened, and for the first time in years, allowed himself to cry. The past had been reopened, and nothing would ever be the same again. The days in the DeLuca mansion blended into one another, a golden haze of wealth and quiet despair. Isabela moved through her life like a ghost, navigating grand rooms filled with portraits of ancestors who had never truly loved, only ruled. Leonardo was always there, a shadow at the edge of her vision, impossible to ignore. He carried himself with that same rigid elegance, yet now she noticed the fractures beneath, moments when his control faltered, and she glimpsed the raw intensity he tried so desperately to hide. It was in the way his hands clenched slightly when speaking of family obligations, in the faint tremor in his voice when addressing his father, and in the way his eyes softened when they met hers across the drawing room. They began speaking in whispers, small conversations at first, innocent in appearance but loaded with unspoken meaning. Every glance held the weight of desire restrained by duty. Leonardo, despite his upbringing, found himself drawn to her vulnerability and intelligence, while Isabela discovered a courage she had never known before. In the quiet of the library, where the scent of old leather mingled with the faint trace of candle smoke, their worlds collided. Words flowed with careful intensity, their confessions hidden behind veils of politeness and propriety. Each phrase, each laugh shared in secrecy, became a rebellion against the life imposed upon them. Their closeness grew like a slow-burning flame. Every touch, fleeting but deliberate, sent a ripple of forbidden electricity through her. Isabela felt it in her chest, a mixture of fear and exhilaration that she could not name. Leonardo's hand brushing hers over the spine of a book, the slight lean of his shoulder as they walked together in the garden, it was a language neither dared speak aloud. Yet both understood completely. Their love was dangerous, a delicate secret that could shatter their world if discovered. The tension of living under the watchful gaze of Don Carlo made every moment of intimacy an act of rebellion. And still, they could not resist. One evening, beneath the fading glow of sunset, they found themselves on the terrace, the air heavy with the scent of jasmine and rain-soaked stone. Leonardo turned to her, his expression a mixture of longing and torment. Isabela, you must understand, what we feel is a danger to everything, our families, our legacies, yet I cannot let this go. I would rather risk everything for a moment with you than live a lifetime in this gilded cage without you. She looked up at him, the intensity in his eyes mirrored in her own. I have never been free before. Not like this. And even though the world would judge us, even though the walls around us are suffocating, I feel alive when I am with you. They leaned into each other, a kiss, tender yet fierce, sealing a love that was both salvation and curse. But their stolen moments could not exist without consequence. Don Carlo began to suspect the unusual closeness between them. The patriarch's presence became more oppressive, a constant shadow over their secret. Isabela and Leonardo moved with even more caution, their love a whispered promise in the halls of marble and velvet. Yet the danger intensified their passion, made each encounter more vivid, each glance more potent. They were bound not only by desire but by the knowledge that love in their world came at a price far higher than most could imagine. Amid the tension, Isabela discovered a hidden room, a place filled with portraits, letters, and journals revealing the family's buried secrets. She realized that Leonardo had been trapped by a history that predated both of them, a legacy of deceit, greed, and manipulation. Yet, in learning the truth, she felt a strange sense of empowerment. Their love was no longer just a secret rebellion. It became a force of resistance, a light cutting through generations of darkness. They shared their fears and hopes in that hidden sanctuary, the weight of their inheritance lessened by the closeness of their hearts. Every revelation drew them together, forging an unbreakable bond even in the face of looming peril. The culmination of this forbidden love arrived during a stormy night, the kind where lightning carved jagged paths across the sky and thunder shook the foundations of the mansion. They found themselves alone in the grand hall, the house empty but for their presence. Words were unnecessary. Each look, each touch, each breath communicated the depth of their connection. They danced silently among the shadows, their love a secret choreography of longing, guilt, and passion. It was a night where time seemed to bend, where the world outside the walls ceased to exist. And in that intensity, they glimpsed a future beyond the confines of their families, a life they might claim if only fate allowed. Yet fate was relentless. Don Carlo's wrath, the inevitable consequence of transgression, loomed over them. The patriarch's fury was not only a threat to their happiness, but a reminder of the cruel limitations imposed by family duty. And still, Isabela and Leonardo refused to yield to fear entirely. Every embrace, every whispered vow, became a defiance of history itself. Their love was a fragile rebellion, yet it contained a power neither had anticipated: the courage to confront their past and the audacity to hope for a future together. As the night deepened, they stood at the balcony, rain pelting against the stone, wind whipping through their hair. Leonardo held her tightly, and she felt his heart beating, a mirror to her own. "No matter what comes," he whispered, "we face it together. Even if the world crumbles around us, even if the past seeks to destroy us, we are ours." Isabela rested her head against his chest, feeling the tremor of fear mingled with exhilaration. "Then let it come," she replied softly. "Because we will survive it, because we love." In that storm, love and danger fused into something breathtaking, almost sacred. Their hearts, once confined by duty and expectation, now beat in a rhythm uniquely their own, and though the consequences awaited, unseen and inevitable, they had found something that could not be taken away: an unspoken promise of fidelity, a love profound and forbidden, and the courage to endure the darkness together. The mansion that had seemed a prison now stood as a stage for their rebellion, a place where passion and pain intertwined, and amid the shadows of wealth, family secrets, and societal expectation, Isabela and Leonardo discovered a rare truth: love, even when forbidden, could illuminate the path through the deepest darkness. The storm that had raged outside the DeLuca mansion eventually gave way to a haunting calm. The air was thick with the scent of rain and regret, as if the very walls had absorbed the echoes of what had been confessed and what had been lost. In the aftermath, silence settled like dust. The house stood still, elegant but fragile, just like the people who lived within it. Isabela woke before dawn, the sky bruised in shades of silver and violet. Leonardo was gone. The last memory she had of him was the warmth of his arms, the desperate promise that they would face everything together. But as the new day broke, reality crept in like a thief. He had vanished without a word. The housekeepers whispered rumors. Some said Don Carlo had sent him away to a remote estate. Others claimed he had fled to protect her from his father's wrath. Either way, his absence hollowed her world. For days, Isabela wandered through the mansion in silence. Every corridor seemed longer, every echo sharper. The portraits of stoic ancestors watched her with judgmental eyes, as if mocking her for believing love could survive in a world built on power and deceit. Yet somewhere deep inside, a seed of defiance remained. Leonardo had once told her, "Freedom isn't given, it's taken." And so, she began to take it. Isabela sought out the hidden room again, the one filled with family letters and forgotten histories. She spent hours reading them by candlelight, uncovering the truth behind the DeLuca empire. Beneath the luxury, there were crimes, betrayal, arranged marriages, secret deals cloaked in elegance but born of desperation. And among the dusty papers, she found something else: a letter from Leonardo's mother, written before her death. It spoke of love sacrificed, of choices made to protect him, and of a promise that one day, someone pure-hearted would break the cycle. Isabela realized then that she had become that person. She confronted Don Carlo in his study, where the firelight painted his face in flickering gold and shadow. The man who had always seemed invincible now looked older, diminished by the weight of his own decisions. "You've built an empire," she told him quietly, "but you buried your humanity beneath it." He stared at her, eyes narrowing, but something in her calm unnerved him. "You think love will save you?" he asked. "It never does." Isabela met his gaze, unwavering. "It already has." Her courage shattered something inside him. For the first time, Don Carlo faltered not as a patriarch, but as a man. There was no shouting, no threats, only a weary silence. When she turned to leave, he said softly, "Leonardo did what I could not. He loved without fear." Those words echoed in her mind long after she left the room. Weeks passed. The world beyond the mansion began to change. Don Carlo withdrew from public life, his health declining, as if the truth itself had consumed him. The DeLuca name, once untouchable, became a ghostly whisper among high society. And then, one evening, a letter arrived for Isabela sealed in black wax, bearing no return address. Her hands trembled as she opened it. It was from Leonardo, he wrote, from a distant coastal town, where the air was cleaner, the sky unburdened by smoke or lies. He spoke of rebuilding himself, of learning who he was, without the weight of family expectation. "I am no longer a DeLuca," he wrote, "and yet I have never felt more alive. But freedom means nothing if you are not beside me." The words bled with longing, with love restrained but not extinguished. He asked her to come not out of desperation, but out of shared hope. For the first time, Isabela didn't hesitate. She packed only what she needed, a few letters, a small locket, and her courage. As she left the mansion, the sun began to rise, flooding the marble floors with gold. She paused at the threshold, feeling the warmth of light on her skin. For years, she had lived in the shadows of other people's choices. Now, she would live by her own. The journey to the coast was long, winding through villages and fields alive with the scent of spring. Each mile shed another layer of her old self. By the time she arrived, she was no longer the woman who had been sold into marriage. She was someone reborn. The town was quiet, the sea vast and endless before her. And there, standing by the cliffs, was Leonardo. He looked different, untouched, unarmored, his expression soft with disbelief and joy. When their eyes met, the distance between them dissolved. No words were needed. He stepped forward, and she fell into his arms, both trembling, both laughing through tears that tasted of salt and relief. The world seemed to hold its breath as they embraced. "You came," he whispered. "Always," she replied, "because you are my truth." They built a small life together by the sea, far from the gilded world that had once imprisoned them. It was modest, imperfect, yet filled with a peace neither had known before. Isabela spent her mornings painting, capturing the ocean in shades of blue and silver. Leonardo worked with his hands, tending to a small vineyard that clung to the rocky hills. In the evenings, they sat by the fire, their silence no longer heavy but full, two souls who had finally found home. But life, even in peace, carries echoes of the past. One day, a letter arrived from Don Carlos's estate. It contained only a single sentence, written in shaky handwriting. "Tell my son that I understand now." There was no signature, no crest, just those words, fragile and redemptive. Leonardo read them aloud, his voice breaking. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Isabela reached for his hand. "Forgiveness," she said softly, "is the final act of love." He nodded, eyes glistening. "Then perhaps," he whispered, "we have both been forgiven." Years passed. Their love matured like aged wine, deep, complex, unpretentious. They never returned to the mansion, but its shadows no longer haunted them. Sometimes, when the sea was calm and the sunset lingered like fire on the horizon, Isabela would stand by the window and think of the girl she once was, the bride in silk, the prisoner of expectation, the dreamer who dared to love. She would smile then, faintly, knowing that even the darkest truths can give birth to light. One evening, as the wind carried the scent of the vineyard through the open door, Leonardo turned to her and said, "If you could live it all again, the pain, the danger, the loss, would you?" She looked at him, her heart swelling with the quiet certainty that only love can bring. "Every moment," she said, "because it brought me here, to you." And as the waves crashed softly against the shore, their laughter mingled with the sound of the sea, a melody of freedom, of redemption, of two souls who had defied their fate and, in doing so, rewritten it. In the end, their story was not about wealth or power. but the courage to choose love when the world said it was forbidden. Because sometimes the truest kind of freedom is simply the right to love and to be loved in return. If this story moved your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more cinematic tales of love, loss, and redemption. Every story we tell reminds us that even in the darkest places, light can find its way through.